session. I'm going to hand it over to you, Sadia, to bring us up to speed on budget notes and funding options.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council members, and City Manager. I am Sadia Sattar, Director of Budget and Management Services. Welcome to your very first City Council budget work session, which is a little separate from what we did prior to we proposed the budget. So today we will talk to you all about some budget notes and funding options, and then later we will be joined by Matt Currier from Transportation to talk to you all about parking fees for the fiscal year 24 budget as well. So as I mentioned earlier, we will be talking about some budget notes and funding options for you all. I do want to say that as part of the fiscal year 24 proposed budget process, City Council asked the Budget and Management Services Department to look into 5 areas or 5 budget notes. Of those 5 budget notes, 3 were operationally satisfied as part of the fiscal year 24 proposed budget. And those include the Wake County Legal Support Center, funding for that center in the amount of $50,000, as well as fire station Wi-Fi, and then a composting study that was funded through the Solid Waste Services Department's budget. What we will be talking about today are 2 other budget notes that we received after we proposed the budget. So that was a budget note that Councilmember Jones, you had asked us to look into, which was crossing guard compensation here in the city. And then Council members Melton and Harrison had asked us to look into e-bike rebate program here for the city. So I do have representatives from the Office of Sustainability to talk to you all about that budget note. But before I kick off talking about crossing guard compensation, I did want to ask City Council if you had any questions related to the 3 funded budget notes today. All right. So I'm going to kick off into crossing guard compensation here, which was the 4th budget note that we received as part of the fiscal year 24 budget process. So we did provide a pretty lengthy memo for City Council to review, which has also been added into board docs for residents to review as well. So just giving you a broad overview here about the crossing guards in the City of Raleigh. The crossing guard program is overseen by the Raleigh Police Department's Detective Division. At the moment, we have 2 crossing guards here in the city that provide services to 24 elementary and 9 middle schools. These are permanent part-time employees, which means temporary permanent part-time employees, which means that they do not receive benefits, but they do work in an hour and a half time slots and work on an average of 21.5 hours a week. So the starting pay for a crossing guard is $11 an hour. On average, these crossing guards are making about $11.43. And I do want to remind Council that last year, as part of the fiscal year 23 adopted budget, we did raise the pay for temporary part-time employees from about $8.25 an hour to $11 an hour. So as part of our research for the budget note, we did contact municipalities in the area. So we contacted Durham, the City of Charlotte, City of Concord, Asheville, as well as the towns of Apex and Cary to find out how their crossing guard program compares to ours. So as you can see that the City of Raleigh is in the lower range of hourly pay for crossing guard programs in the region. And then how we manage crossing guards is more or less similar to our neighbors as well. So all these municipalities, with the exception of the City of Charlotte and the town of Apex, have their police departments overseeing the crossing guard program. Charlotte contracts the crossing guard program with Charlotte-Mecklenburg County Schools, and then Cary contracts out with a private company to provide that service as well. And then in this chart, you will also see that crossing guards in our neighboring jurisdictions work a variety of hours. So anywhere from 21.5 hours a week here in the City of Raleigh to about 10 hours in Concord, 10 hours in Durham, and 10 hours in Charlotte. I did want to remind Council that while we are looking at crossing guard compensation today, we do have other part-time classifications here in the City of Raleigh that do earn an hourly wage comparable to our crossing guards. So we have our scorekeepers, our lifeguards, our pool managers, our stage technicians that are all earning comparable hourly rates as well. So as part of the budget note, we do have 4 funding options for City Council to consider. So if we were to do the status quo, that is our option 1. So maintain that current pay rate that is costing us on an ongoing basis about $170,000 and change. This will keep our hourly pay rate to $11.43 an hour at 22 crossing guards and working for 21.5 hours a week. Now, we did also look at what our average, if we were to raise that pay, what else could we do? So we did an average of all those municipalities that we benchmarked, and we realized that the hourly average there was about $15.66. So if we were to raise crossing guard hourly rate to $15.66 an hour, that'll cost us on an ongoing basis about $319,000 and some change here in the city of Raleigh. Now, for those of you who are numbers people like I am, you would have noticed that Durham actually pays the highest hourly rate for their crossing guards, which is $17.92 an hour. So if we were to compare Raleigh's crossing guards pay to Durham's, that'll cost us, that's our option 3, that's going to cost us about $418,000 and some change. So we've given you some options. So let's maintain the status quo. Let's raise the rate to an hourly average, or let's raise it as high as the city of Durham's to $17.92 an hour. And then we have a fourth option, which is, if you recall, we've added about $300,000 to a compensation study as part of the fiscal year 24 capital program. The compensation study will start or kick off, knock on wood, in fiscal year 24. We plan to come back with results of the compensation study as part of the fiscal year 25 budget process in hopes to implement the study in fiscal year 26. So we'll be looking at positions, but one of the things that HR is working on right now is really looking at the scope of the study to see what we really can accomplish. So what we can do as part of this process is including all permanent or temporary part-time job classifications in that scope. So we'll not just look at our permanent employees, but also our temporary part-time employees, so that we can address all pay disparities here and see how we compare to our neighbors and the market in general. So that is our fourth option for you all. So with that, I'd like to open it up to your comments if you have any or questions. Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
First of all, thank you so much. It was a lot to read and digest before. I want to say that I find this a huge priority just because, you know, we're all a fan of public schools, and how do we make sure that where we can invest, that we are doing that so that they know that we're partners with them. I think Cary had the highest one though, right? I think they were at $24 where...
That's probably because they contract out with a private
because they
company. Yes, so you are right about that.
Got it. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, because they have a separate. So
Yes.
is that an option to contract out, or?
We did not look at that option as part of this budget note.
No, you're fine. I'm just wondering if that's. Anywho, so I think it's really important that we show that. I get kind of like, why is Durham out doing us? Oh my gosh, we're Wake County Public Schools. We got the limit. So I tend to want to go on that higher end because I want to show we have 22 employees here. And as we see, Durham works less but gets paid more. So our employees are working less hours or more hours and getting paid less. So I'm wanting to right that ship as we move forward. So for me, specifically, I would want to go for that higher option to match the city of Durham. But that's just my thought process on it. So I'd love to hear others.
Councilmember, if I may interject, you will have noticed as part of our budget note that we did compare. Obviously, you're mentioning that Durham is paying their crossing guards more, but they do work less. So there is a comparison. So if we're comparing, let's say, what 10 hours in Raleigh as opposed to 21.5 hours in Raleigh as opposed to 10 hours in Durham, our crossing guards are actually making more.
Yeah, but they're working more for that.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So I do have a question, just so for clarification, follow up. Option 2 was the $15. Where will this money come from?
That's a great question, Mayor. So at the moment, the police RPD's detective division has a line item specifically for the crossing guards. So you would have noticed in our presentation that they do have a 34% vacancy rate. So there is an opportunity within RPD to fund should we decide to go with a higher pay rate. So there will be, let's say, no adding on to RPD's budget. RPD has the capacity to take this on should we go up.
And I guess my second comment is, would you consider the $15 and then looking at this for compensation? I'm more concerned about equity between departments, looking at what we pay our lifeguards and others, and it would be a significant jump. So I'm looking for a potential compromise here on from an equity standpoint.
Oh, for sure. And I totally, I get that as well. I mean, I appreciate the classifications. When I look at it, it talks to our Vision Zero as we're trying to make sure that there are less vehicular accidents and deaths. They're in charge of making sure our children don't get hit by a car. So I'm not trying to put them up against each other in that regard, but I find it's pretty important for me, but definitely open to discussing something different than the 17.
Okay, and thank you for the explanation on the funding. That was very helpful.
You're welcome.
I had Councilmember Branch, then Councilmember Patton, and then Councilmember Melton.
Yeah, for me, looking at it, I was actually okay on the higher end, option 3, but I wanted to, I guess, combine that option with option 4.
That's
Because I think long term, we need to really review and look at it. And I know we're talking about 2 or 3 years before implementation from the study. So with that being the case, our economy changes a lot faster. So that's why I was okay with going with option 4. Option 3, because by the time we get to 2026, 17 might come back even lower based upon where our economy is at the time. But making sure that we do look at this along with our lifeguards and our recreational leaders.
But then we're not dealing with lifeguards for 3 more years.
Well, we just raised lifeguards last year.
We had to.
Right.
We had such a shortage.
Right. So that's my point. We just raised lifeguards last year, so 214. But we didn't touch crossing guards at all. So, and I know we did a comp study and a comparison for lifeguards at the time when we decided to make that increase. So that would be what I would support.
Okay. Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, similar comments, two things. So similar comments, I wanted to make sure that these are not, option 3 and 4 are not mutually exclusive. And a question would be, would adding all of these permanent part-time employees or temporary part-time employees to the compensation study increase the cost of the compensation study itself?
I will take a stab at that. I'm sure the more we add to that scope, but we haven't solidified what the actual scope of that study is going to be yet. So we've had internal conversations about looking at part-time pay as well. So,
Okay, yeah, cool. And then another question that I had to clarify where the money is coming from. So if this is coming from their existing line item and they have a 34% vacancy rate, and my understanding that they would now call the 22 positions full staffing and consider that they don't have a vacancy rate? Like, is the money coming from cutting those other positions?
No. So the current budget for school crossing guards at RPD is about, it's about $360,000 in that line item. So with that 34% vacancy rate, there is a budget availability that should we scale up to a higher hourly rate. RPD has spoken to us. They will not be laying off anybody, but they will be able to adjust schedules of crossing guards moving forward to ensure that they can stay within that line item budget and hire and upscale. The hourly rate should need be.
So they wouldn't lay off anyone, but they might cut their hours?
So I am actually, Sergeant Lopez is here in the audience. So Sergeant Lopez, could you please come by and answer this question before I mess it up?
Thanks.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, I'm just trying to gain an understanding. So they're at 22 positions now, 34% vacancy. That's like not quite 8 people. If we are not increasing the line item here, but we are increasing the hourly wage, are we not going to fill those vacancies? Is that how we create that
So I can tell
capacity?
you this is the first time this has been brought to my attention as far as that aspect of it. With the current 22 crossing guards we have, that is not sufficient to cover all the vacancies. So even if we raise the rate, we still need to hire more crossing guards to ensure all the schools are covered.
I guess I'm trying to get clarity on if we do both things, we raise the rate and then we fill the vacancies, is the line item in the budget still going to support
No.
it? No.
I couldn't tell you without looking at the numbers exactly. I think there'll eventually have to be an increase, but without actually looking at the numbers, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Got it. Okay.
The amount that's currently appropriated will not cover 100% fully staffed at that $17.92 hourly rate, because the amount that's in that line item was 100% baked at 100% at the current rate of pay. So there will be a trade-off. We'll have to figure out where we make that difference up.
Got it. Understood.
Go back to the options.
Would probably be
Option
this-
2 was the 1566. From an internal staff perspective, that is the staff recommendation for multiple reasons. To create parity and equity with our other part-time positions, and obviously safety has been one that has been really critical over the last 18 months with pedestrian fatalities and the like. But also in PRCR, we also have camp counselors that touch our kids from the moment they're dropped off in the morning to the moment they leave in the evening, and that rate of pay is not the same. So rather than do a piecemeal approach at it, we were recommending that we bring forward the temporary part-time positions as part of that comprehensive review. So the $15 mark would kind of get us halfway there, and then the recommendation, I think somebody said it a few minutes ago, it may be $18. But at this point, school bus drivers are being brought in at $17.50, $18. So just trying to make sure we've got parity in our classes of employees.
Councilmember Melton?
My comments have changed a little since the discussion at the table, since I raised my hand. I do think we should increase it. I can support the 15 upon further conversation. I also think we do need to add the part-time employees to the pay analysis. I said this last budget cycle, Councilmember Stewart did as well, but I'd like all of our part-time employees to be making at least $15 an hour. I know there's been a big push for a federal minimum wage increase, and at least the federal government has implemented $15 for their employees and their contractors. And so I think that would send the right message. We'll do the study, but for right now, we're talking about crossing guards. I think they should at least be at 15.
Okay, Councilmember Black?
So I guess I just need a little bit more clarity. So with the 22 crossing guards, plus the people that are in the line item from the police budget for the crossing guard pay, what would be the vacancy rate with the 22 people? Would it still be the vacancy rate would still be there?
So currently, we're staffed at 22 with a 34% vacancy rate. So I'm assuming that if we add another 11, we would be at full staffing, right, Sergeant? Yes.
Okay. And so the question is, like, the budget in the pay rate for the line item covers $17, but not all the way.
That is correct.
So then we'd have to be able to fill the gap. Okay, that's all I wanted to understand. Thanks.
No problem.
So, Councilmember Jones, what I'm hearing seems to be consensus around options 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion on that, or just provide direction?
Direction for us to go back and
Want to make a motion?
Yes, I would love to motion for option 2, increasing the crossing guard pay to $15.66 an hour.
And option 4?
And option 4. Yep, and option 4.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. That was unanimous. And so you have direction on how to move forward with that now.
Thank
Okay.
you.
And then I
I
guess-
wanted to state that I do want it to move to $17, but if people are comfortable with 15 for now, then as we do the pay study, that's awesome. But I did want 17.
And just one other quick question, that 319, is that covered in the budget for that line item? Would we still need to have extra funding if we were fully staffed for that one?
That would be covered.
That would be covered?
Yes.
Okay,
That's,
thank you.
that's why. Yeah. Okay, next we have the e-bike rebate program.
Yes, so I am going to pass it on to the Office of Sustainability to speak to you all about the e-bike incentive program here in the city of Raleigh.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Good to see you. Megan Anderson, Head of Sustainability for the city. I'm joined today by a couple partners that have been working really hard on this. So Nicole Goddard from the Office of Sustainability, she's a sustainability analyst, and Mason Chambly, who runs the Transportation Demand Management Program, have been working really hard on this so far. So we're here today to talk to you about your options that Councilmember Melton had requested and Councilmember Harrison had backed up for looking at an e-bike incentive program. I wanted to mention that our office had been tracking this. It's something that's really been out in the market across different cities looking at as well. And Nicole had brought it to me a while ago, so something that we were pleased to see council paying attention to as well. So we've done some initial looks in to see what other cities are doing and what it might look like in Raleigh to do a pilot. So in your packet, we included a memo that had a couple options for you. And there was two there, and I'll mention what those were here for you today. So option one was what staff was recommending. That was to utilize funds from the Energy Efficiency Conservation Block Grant, say that 2 times fast, EECBG funds, to fund a pilot e-bike incentive program at the amount of $150,000 plus contractual costs to work with a third party to administer the program. Staff have provided information on that proposed approach that we can share. It was in your packet as well. And then option two was request that staff more fully evaluate what an e-bike incentive program might look like and bring back options and costs to City Council, including outlining resources and costs to create and administer a program in-house. So this could be presented to City Council in fall of 2023 if you wanted to go that way. If council would like to pursue either option, we'd appreciate hearing any thoughts or questions council might have, and we can then take those back and do further evaluation and discussion with the impacted departments, the city attorney's office, and others on what that pilot might look like. And I'll pause here to see if you have any questions or comments, and then if you would like, we can give you a short presentation on what that might look like if you wanted to go with option one for the EECBG funds as well.
Councilmember Melton?
I don't have questions. I would just say that I'd like to do both. Start with the pilot program and then give y'all some more time to work towards a long-term program. So getting more information what the pilot would look like may be helpful. But I also think that on a long-term basis, this would be a good opportunity to see if maybe we could get some funding from the county and from the private sector. And I know that there are other grants out there that we could probably apply for. But I think starting with the $150,000 from the funding source we have as a pilot would be great to get it up and running.
Okay.
Councilmember Fort?
I may have a question, but you may be covering it. Are you going to talk about the income qualified vouchers as a part of your presentation?
That is in there. If you want to hear more about that, I'm happy to do that. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nicole Goddard in our office to give you a short presentation.
Good afternoon, Nicole Goddard from the Office of Sustainability. So I'll give a little bit of background and then dive into what we kind of packaged into option one. So e-bikes are a motorized bicycle with an electric motor to help assist propulsion. They come in a variety of classes in addition to cargo bikes, which have a heavier carrying capacity and are able to carry things like children and groceries. And they are quite an investment. So they range in price from several $100s for a budget model from an online retailer through to several thousand for really high-end cargo bikes. But local retailers start selling budget models in the $1,200 to $1,500 range. So still representing quite a large investment for most people. Why should we incentivize e-bikes? Well, e-bikes are capable of replacing most car trips. So the Department of Energy estimates that 75% of U.S. vehicle trips are less than 10 miles, which is a distance that can be covered comfortably on an e-bike. Even without electric power, they still function as a bicycle. So if your battery drains, you can still get home. And the average cost of electricity to power an e-bike is less than $15 a year. Compare that with average cost for gas for your vehicle, around $1,300 a year. And so after that initial investment is made, they become a very economical option for getting from place to place. And then they have also been shown to increase cycling accessibility and physical activity, especially among seniors and people with disabilities. This type of program can achieve a number of goals for the city. So we could start to see environmental impacts through reducing those vehicle miles traveled and contributing to helping achieve our greenhouse gas emissions goals. We can support our local bike market, and then we can gather some data on how people are using these cycles, how that might affect commuter behavior, and then how that might also affect health and social behavior as well. We looked at a number of different models to bring forward today, and we were looking particularly for how we could spend money the most efficiently, but also consider equity in our program design. So we looked at things like rebates, which is you buy a bike, you bring us your receipt, we give you back a set amount of money, to sort of a point of sale voucher where someone would go to a shop that would participate in the program and get a discounted price immediately off of their purchase. A hybrid model where we might be able to offer both of those things, and then maybe a free e-bike program or a loan-to-own type of program that some cities have tested. The recommendation that we're bringing forward for a pilot would be a voucher program with a third-party administrator. So a voucher program is going to do a couple of things. It's going to put that money into our local e-bike market, so people will have to go to a brick-and-mortar shop that offers maintenance and things on site. Sorry, I lost my place there. And then that's also going to reduce the upfront outlay of cash. So people don't have to wait around for a refund from us. And then working with a third-party administrator is going to speed up how we're able to pay those retailers. We're hoping to offer income-based voucher amounts. So for all Raleigh residents 18 and over would be eligible to participate in the program. If they could offer proof of income at or below 80% of AMI, they would qualify for an income qualified voucher, and that would be $1,500 per person, and that would be sufficient to cover the cost of an e-bike. But they would not be eligible for cash back from that purchase, so any other money would roll back. And then a standard voucher would be open to anyone and would not exceed $500 per person. And we think that this amount would be sufficient to sort of catalyze people who might already be thinking of buying an e-bike to maybe do that sooner. Additional recommendations, again, that we work with local or regional bike shops that provide that kind of maintenance and service, and that'll keep those incentive dollars in the Raleigh economy, and encourage people to speak to an expert to understand how to use their bike, how to maintain it, and have a place to go if they have a service requirement. We also recommend allocating funding allocating vouchers in equal amounts. So the funding would be allocated 75% toward income qualified vouchers and 25% toward standard vouchers. We also want to encourage safe riding. So where people may not be able to get money back from their purchase, they would be able to use that to spend that at the time of their purchase toward a helmet or lights or locks or other things that is going to make them easier and safer to ride their bikes. And then finally, we would recommend that this only cover new e-bike purchases. So in the news, we've seen a lot of hazards linked to e-bikes that are improperly stored or maintained or have aftermarket batteries. And so we want to encourage people to have any warranties that stay with them, and that they would also only have the peace of mind that they have a new piece of equipment. As Megan mentioned, we've identified the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant for $150,000 plus the contract expenses for program administration. So that would allow 75 income qualified vouchers and 75 standard vouchers to be made available. We'd like to require our participants to give us data on how they're using the bike so we can see any mode shift impacts or quality of life or health impacts that they might observe. And a little bit of background on the EECBG. We're eligible this year for around $450,000 in a non-recurring grant, but that's also non-competitive. And so some of these funds would be set aside for this pilot project. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Just question around the income verification.
Mm-hmm.
Who does that?
So that would be done by the third-party administrator in this case, and people would be able to submit things like tax documents or other or evidence that they're participating in other income-qualified programs to achieve that.
Okay.
Councilmember Fort?
with the income qualified vouchers, about how many folks do you anticipate would be able to participate in that part of the program?
At this funding amount, it would be 75. So.
Any other questions? Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, just more questions around like the third-party administrators. So like what's the sort of like consumer experience? Like I show up at the Trek store and what happens there?
You show up at a Trek store with your voucher that you've received from, probably from an email from the city. That voucher would have a unique number on it. They would have a website the Trek store would have a website they'd be able to go to type in to understand if your voucher was valid, had already been cashed in or something like that. Your experience is all of a sudden your price is knocked down by $500 or $1,500.
Okay, so before you go to the store, you will have come to like city website and entered in information and gotten a response.
You'll come to the idea would be that you would come to our website, that would take a link that you would go to an application process. And there are several different ways we could structure that application. But ideally then, however many people would be given vouchers, either through sort of being randomly selected or first come, first serve. And then those people would get an email confirmation with that number and then be able to go make their purchase. And so the idea is that we're not sending out anybody to make a purchase without knowing that they have a voucher.
Got it. Cool. That's helpful. My only other question was, out of this $450,000, what is the other $300,000 going to be used on?
So there are some other projects that are sort of in discussion, but Megan, I don't know if you want to talk about some of those.
Yeah, so we have way more ideas always than we do funding. So we're playing a lot of those puzzle piece of games with a lot of different funding to see what makes us most eligible for what, impact wise. And so there's a couple other ideas and we haven't finalized anything, but just to tease the ideas, Council has already set funding aside for the closed Wilders Grove landfill for a solar evaluation, and we don't want to do that in a vacuum where we're not looking at the wider community benefit of that, and so we don't have funding set aside for that at this point, so we're looking at how much that would cost and then the delta to really look at a community engagement cycle with that, and so part of that funding is looking at that, and then there's some other projects that we're looking at different funding pots that we were looking at for this too, that were also just different community benefits that would bring climate action. We can bring more information back. We're still kind of putting those puzzle pieces together there. Yeah.
The only comment I would have, and I know you will do this, but let's have a very thoughtful outreach program to low to moderate income communities. We might even consider doing some door knocking and getting the word out that way so people know about this and hear about it. And because that could be a game changer for a lot of people. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll just mention the part of the reason I think to look at a third party to begin is so we can really spend our time on that part that's important and not have to just figure out all the logistics, because it is quite a bit from what we've researched. So it'll help us really dive into what matters there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Melton, then Harrison.
I'll go last because I was going to make a motion.
And you probably want to second it, right?
I just may.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks so much for this information. I'm really impressed how fast that you all pulled together this detailed program. It makes me really excited. I just have to put a plug for this personally. I did get an e-bike in November because I have to come double the distance now for this job, and it allows me to do that. So today I've taken 5 trips. 4 have been on my e-bike. 1 was in the car. I'm going to do 1 more by the car. So 2/3 of my day has been by e-bike. And so the distance that you can cover, the ease of it, the hills. If you haven't been on a bike in a while, I've seen folks get on our, rideshare bikes. All of a sudden, their face lights up. They are smiling. They're like, I can do this. And people of all ages really can do this. And families, and you can stop at the grocery store. And so I do think this is a game changer, and I'm really excited to see if it has an impact and how we can get around in Raleigh. So I just appreciate anyone's support on this and the focus on this, and especially the income eligibility issue too, because to get this in the hands of people that otherwise maybe wouldn't make that investment, really, again, is a game changer in how much you spend on how you get around. So I just want to say thank you.
Especially then if they don't own a car or have to buy a car. Just saved a lot of opportunity. Thank you for being thoughtful in that way. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, just briefly, please have some focus and priority on those 60% and below within the AMI. I know by statute it's 80%, but if we can have some thought, because it's only 75 vouchers. So with only 75 vouchers, having some intentionality, I think would be beneficial.
Councilmember Melton, you ready to make that motion now?
Yes, and it's 75 vouchers for now, but my motion would be to proceed with the pilot program and also implementing a permanent, sustainable program, long-term funding. And so that's my request.
Surprise. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you for your work on this. A lot of research, I know, went into it. Very good job. Thank you. Councilmember Melton.
Mayor, I have one more budget note request. I know this is coming late, but I have been talking to the manager's office. And so my request is, as we continue to struggle to recruit, develop, and retain highly skilled public safety employees throughout the organization, I would like to ask that staff evaluate and implement annual education incentives for Raleigh Fire and Raleigh Emergency Communications, like the benefits that are currently provided to Raleigh Police, and that would be implemented in fiscal year '24. Additionally, in speaking with the manager, I'd like to request a review of our current employee assistance program that includes education benefits for all employees. I think it's important to understand if we are still meeting the needs of our dynamic workforce and remaining an attractive employer for current and future employees. So that's my request.
Is that a motion?
So moved. And Councilmember Branch just, or Mayor Pro Tem
Mayor Pro
Branch.
Tem
seconded.
just seconded. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous as well.
Can I please jump in? We would be more than happy to work for you on this budget note. I do have one request though, please. It is my understanding that the agenda has to be published on Thursday. We have our next meeting on June 12th, which is next Monday. Could I please request that we publish the agenda on Friday instead? So that we have, can we do that?
I didn't get a chance to get to you this afternoon. I got sidetracked before. We'll work it out.
Okay.
I will speak to it tomorrow. The timeliness with the alignment of the adoption of the budget probably won't go hand in hand. We've got some future plans to be able to bring forward a comprehensive review and look at this, and so we'll speak to it tomorrow.
All right, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe next we have Matthew coming up, talk to us about the parking rates.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Matt Courier, I'm the parking manager for the city. So coming back again, so we're going to do a brief overview of what we talked about last time with our parking citation fee changes. We have some adjustments in here based on the feedback we had last time and some discussion to have. So as you'll remember, our current citation fee methodology has really two main buckets with this kind of small other category. In that, it has our regulatory citations being things like expired meters, overtime parking, when people park safely but just park a little bit too long, being $20, and then everything else almost bucketed into this big kind of $30 bucket. That's where people maybe parking in safely but in the wrong types of locations, so maybe they're parking in a loading zone instead of a regular parking space, but it also includes things like blocking fire hydrants and blocking bike lanes and parking right on the sidewalk or blocking crosswalks. And then we have this other citation group, which is just a few with ADA or handicap space violations being at $100. And again, 90% of that goes to Wake County schools. And then residential permit zone violations at $30 and electric vehicle spaces at $50. So we're proposing modifying this to categorize our parking citations into buckets based on their impact, where violations with lower community impact would be lowered, so think of those as things like expired meters, and violations with greater community impact would be higher, so things like blocking crosswalks, fire hydrants, bike lanes. The goal here is to focus our enforcement and behavior change on safety and quality of life violations. to lower the financial burden of these low-impact violations, and then finally to use paint and other materials to encourage safe curb space usage. So the proposed citation fee methodology for our regulatory fines would actually lower the cost of expired meters, overtime parking, and exceeding time limits from $20 to $15 if folks pay within the first 5 days. And again, this is where folks have parked safely. They've just probably stayed a little bit too long, and we want to give someone else a chance to park there. That second bucket, regulatory 2, would include loading zones and other kind of non-parking curb space usage. Think of curbside pickup zones and other types of uses we have at the curb. We would set that at 30, and that is the same as those are today, so no change there. We now have a new bucket, the safety 1. This is these kind of like codified no parking areas. So think about you can only park so close to an intersection or a stop sign. And also this would include folks who park just kind of poorly. So imagine the folks that you see parallel park and the back end of the car is kind of sticking out into the travel lane a little bit. This would include those types of violations. And then the final one would be our safety 2, which would be our most dangerous violations. So these are folks that are blocking crosswalks, making pedestrians park or walk into travel lanes, blocking sidewalks, fire hydrants, bike lanes, the type of behavior that puts others at a lot of risk. So last time we were here, we proposed $40, and based on feedback, we've increased that to $50 for these. And then finally, we have our other citations. So we would propose moving ADA space violations up from $100 to $200. The state gives us guidance that the max that we can charge on that is $250, so we're still below the max that the state allows. And again, 90% of that revenue goes to Wake County schools. The next would be our residential permit zone violations. This would move from $30 to $40. Electric vehicle space violations would stay the same at $50. And then there's a new category for commercial vehicle safety violations at $50. This is where large, oversized vehicles park in violation of either that safety 1 bucket or safety 2 bucket. And this is to reflect that, when a commercial vehicle parks in a way that is in no parking and blocking a intersection or a stop sign, that impact is just so much more dramatic than a passenger vehicle, just based on the pure size of that vehicle.
Matthew, before you jump
Yes.
ahead, I'm just curious, the ADA space violations, how much revenue do we bring in for that? How often does this occur?
Gosh, that is such a good question. I'm glad I looked that up this morning. I had a feeling that much might come up. Year to date, or not year to date, fiscal year to date, so starting in July and going through the end of May, we've written 277 of those across the city. So not a ton, but that also reflects that we only have 34 on-street ADA spaces. So they're certainly blocked quite a bit, because since there's only 34 spaces there, but not a massive pervasive issue for us.
This is an instance, though, where somebody without an ADA card parks in an ADA space.
That is correct.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
So the next is just a quick review of kind of what the current fees and what the proposed fees are. Again, regulatory 1 with an option to go down from 20 to 15. Regulatory staying the same. Safety 1 going up 5. Safety 2 going up $20. Residential going up 10. ADA spaces doubling to 200. Commercial vehicle safety violations going from 30 to 50, and electric vehicle spaces staying the same at 50. We provided quite a bit of benchmarking last time. I've pulled a lot of that out so we can be a little bit faster here today. But I did want to show on the safety 2 violations kind of where that benchmarking is against these other cities. And again, we benchmark against local, regional, and national cities. So before we were sitting a little bit further on the right side of this with Austin and Dallas and Richmond when we were at 40. And now at 50 for these safety 2 violations, we're right with Nashville, Tennessee, and Chapel Hill. So the next part of the conversation is our Glenwood South nighttime option. So this is where we would create a kind of downtown or a Glenwood South parking overlay where all days, Monday through Sunday, from 9 p.m. to 7 a.m., folks in these colored areas here would have an elevated fee amount, and that's to reflect the amount of pedestrians we have in that area and to reflect the impact it has when folks park very unsafely. So what this essentially is you'll see St. Mary's Street to the west. Let me see if I can draw these real quick. St. Mary's to the west, West Street to the east, Hillsborough Street to the south, and then Peace Street to the north. And then we also include the 2 residential permit districts to the north and west. So last time we were here, we recommended $50. We heard that was too low. So I know you received some guidance from the attorney's office on this, and we've come back with a new amount here. And this would be $200 for violations of Safety 1 or Safety 2, or the residential permit zones. All other fees in this area would remain unchanged. Let me go ahead and click that. So just another quick comparison. So for the Glenwood South option, you'll see there's no change on expired meters or loading zones, but our Safety 1 goes up to 200, Safety 2 goes up to 200 residential permit zones, and then the others would stay the same. And those are the only changes we have. Happy to have discussion.
Councilmember Harrison?
Thanks so much for that presentation. Several of us, a number of us here, were in Glenwood South Saturday night and got to see firsthand the number of people that are out there and the number of vehicles that are associated. As in representing District D at this point, I've heard a lot of concerns about the parking, and so I think this increase is hopefully going to truly, to attract people from going to those neighborhoods. So I am in support, and I thank you for bringing this option to us.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, can you go back to the map?
Yeah.
Can you mark where the available public parking is in Glenwood South?
There's quite a bit. I'm sure I'm going to miss some. So there is Smoky Hollow, which is the Publix, which is here and here, and they have over 1,000 parking spaces there. There is, let me think, that's Jones. There's parking within this building. There's parking within this building. There's the Powerhouse parking deck here. 401 Hillsborough Street's coming on soon here. And then 1 and 2 Glenwood also have public parking here on the south. So a few thousand parking spaces wrapped around the Glenwood South area.
And there's some street parking.
Oh yeah, there's certainly street parking and quite a few surface lots as well.
Awesome. I just wanted to illustrate that there are plenty of opportunities to park outside of these neighborhoods.
Well, and on Glenwood South itself, there are parking decks there. And my understanding from the chief is those decks are now being monitored.
That's correct.
And I think that that's a very wise move, too. Okay. Would we like to provide, in forms of feedback, a motion to allow Matthew to go back and start implementing this?
Second.
Well, first part, let's take the first part first.
I motion to approve these proposed changes to the parking fees.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. And then Glenwood South.
And I also motion to increase these fees for Glenwood South parking violations.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Councilmember Black is opposed. Okay, thank you. All right, Matthew, thank you for your
Thank
work
you.
on this. Appreciate it. Councilmember Melton?
Just real quick before we go, I'm just going to plug this again, but this is just the parking fees, but I do look forward to a more holistic discussion about strategies for Glenwood South, including ways we can direct people to these public parking decks. I think we've incentivized not parking where you can't park now, but I do think that some signage and some wayfinding and other ways so folks know where to go. And then, quite frankly, a lot of folks don't need to be driving who are going to Glenwood South at night, and so ways to rideshare pickup, drop off, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's signage.
Yeah, and there's new proposed signage as well, depending upon today's outcome. So now you have your marching orders, Matthew.
Okay, thank you. All right, and that's the completion of our agenda for this evening. We will be back here tomorrow afternoon, and we'll see you all then. Thank you.